All right, we are back on the podcast where we are training men in spiritual fitness, and I am here with my friend Joe Barnard. Joe, how you doing, my friend?
Good, good. Just had a touch of autumn here in Scotland, so it's a little bit cool in the air. But good
Nice.
summer and good to be back recording.
Well, we just had a touch of a hurricane down here in South Louisiana, so a little different than autumn, but luckily me and my family safe and okay. Still
Good.
got some family members, extended family without power, but they're all right. But yeah, glad to be back with you on the podcast. Today I want us to cover a very specific subject that's actually near and dear to our hearts because of some stuff we've got upcoming. I want to talk just about conferences and retreats and the importance of conferences and retreats in the spiritual life of a man. Full disclosure, I want to talk about this particularly today because soon, in just like a matter of a couple of weeks, Joe, I'm coming to visit you. I'm coming to Scotland, and we're putting on two conferences together. I'm excited about this. You?
Absolutely. Yeah, be ready. You probably don't have any, sweatshirts or jumpers as they call them here, but make sure to bring something. It's not going to feel like Louisiana.
Yeah, that's all right. Look, I will welcome the change in weather for sure, for sure. But no, this is something that I know we are excited to be able to put on for guys there in Scotland, but we also wanted to just take a step back and say, wait, why are we doing this? And is it because we believe this actually can make an impact and is important in the spiritual life of a man? Because that's, what we want to focus our time and energy on here at Cross Training Ministries is helping men have that lifestyle where Christ is first. And I do think that conferences and retreats, things like that, they do play an important role as a piece of that. I think that most guys, you may have had the experience, Joe, when you invite guys to come do one of these things. Most of the time they say, man, you want me to give a whole weekend away to come and do this thing? So I think there is sometimes some convincing that this takes, like reminding, hey, this is something that's important and it is beneficial for you because we have busy lives, right? And it is difficult to take time away to do anything. So I think that at a certain point, we have to say, hold on, we're asking guys to do something that's making them step away from their families. And is it really that important? So I don't know. What would you say to that guy that says, Joe, do I really need to add something else to my schedule?
And I think you begin with, testing your heart and saying, does life feel out of control?
Mm,
Does it feel like you're Martha, not Mary? You're busy doing lots of things, and that one thing needful just never fits in. And when we're in that mode, to have to do something more, it feels like it's just adding weight to life.
yeah.
But the truth is, it's a step toward a kind of recovery of a
Mm,
freedom in life to do what's most important. And so I think when you get to that place, your heart rate's too high, you're not sleeping because you're thinking always about what's coming and what you've not gotten done. As strange as it sounds, is actually the time to, yes, add one thing to the calendar. Because
mm.
if you can actually get away and if you can actually regain some perspective and if you can actually spend some time before the Lord, what usually happens is you come back and realize I need to make some changes and I
Yeah.
need to get life back to that place where what's first importance is in that place of priority, and that actually prepares you for life. And so if life feels out of control, I'd say, as strange as it sounds, that's the moment you need to do something like a conference or something like a retreat.
Yeah, because I would agree with guys in the fact that they don't need to add something else to their schedule. What they need is to subtract stuff from their life, right? But the truth is they're not doing it on their own, right? Right?
Yeah.
You've been adding things and having this crazy, overwhelmed life for a while, and if left on your own, you will not subtract the things out of your life that are getting in the way of good discipleship. And so I think going to a conference or retreat, it helps you to, yeah, kind of recalibrate your life and yeah, you got to add that to your schedule to get there, but you add this conference to your schedule so that you can come back and realize the things you need to subtract from your life and have a more whole life approach to discipleship. Let's maybe take a second to just kind of clarify for guys because we've already used some terminology conference and retreat. Sometimes there are men's conferences that you get invited to. Sometimes it's labeled a men's retreat. Are there differences in these two things, a men's conference, a men's retreat? And if so, what are they? How should guys begin to think about this?
In my thinking, when I think of a conference, I'm thinking of a place where I'm going to be taught,
Mm,
not maybe exclusively, but the truth is, for a lot of areas of life, we lack sufficient information. And so we don't have the ability to have the perspective we need. Maybe it's marriage, maybe it's family, maybe it's, evangelism or, having a witness in the workplace, whatever it might be, that you're starting from a position of a deficit. And so, at a conference, you're wanting to hear some talks and you're wanting to be fed some good Bible teaching that's going to help shape your framework for thinking about a topic. And so, like for ours, we're taking up spiritual leadership.
yeah.
Guys, they hear about leadership nonstop, or that they see books on shelves and news, in airports and such. The truth is, what is leadership and what is spiritual leadership? As much as we talk about it, because we don't really know what it is, or we're
Yeah.
pursuing, management principles in the workplace, but that doesn't really set us up in the home. And so, for a guy who wants to have a positive influence, doesn't really know how to become a man that can do that, who realizes leadership's not just technique,
Mm,
it requires wisdom, it requires certain relationships, it requires passions and character. Well, you come to a conference and there you get fed a lot that you can think about
mm,
and begin to apply to your life, but you need to be taught it. And so part of our conference is not all of it, but it's going to have, those group sessions where you're being taught
mhm,
essential principles about leadership.
mm. Yeah. Okay. So then, how do you think about a retreat? Conferences input, it's being taught things. It's you're learning something from other people. How would you compare that to a retreat?
I think there's a different kind of perspective that comes with a retreat. For me, a retreat is where you want to find some solitude. You want to find some rich conversations. It may not be all by yourself. You might be with a small group of friends, but it's that space where, in a sense, you don't want more information. You want your heart realigned to things maybe things that God has revealed before to you, but you've lost that thread. You need to come back. You need to reboot. You might need to sleep.
Yeah.
It's not an intensive experience, all the rest of it. And I think both can be relationally rich. And so,
Yes.
for us, a conference is going to have group activity. It's going to be about friendship, but it's going to have more of that taught element. That retreat, it's going to have a different kind of deeper relationship, more time for prayer, more time for self examination. And that, in my mind, is more of a retreat.
Yeah, and a lot of times retreats are more focused on the venue or the experience that you're sharing together, whereas a conference is going to be more focused on either the speaker or the topic. So again, it's more that input where a retreat, you're going to a certain beautiful place to enjoy that place alongside other people for a time of reflection, for time of fun, and there's different activities and things that are going to join you together. I also think of like just, if you're sitting around, if you're sitting around a conference, most of the time it's in rows because you're looking at the speaker and enjoying the speaker. If you're sitting around at a retreat, it's in circles because you're just,
Yeah.
kind of gathered, talking together casually. A conference is going to be a little more structured with the schedule, whereas a retreat is not going to be like one, I think, clear indication that if you're at a conference or retreat is what time is breakfast served. Like if
Yeah.
if breakfast is before 8:30 a.m., then you're at a conference because they've got to get all the things in on that structured
Yeah.
schedule.
Yeah.
Whereas a retreat, it's a little less structured, and so you're gonna have a little more time for reflection, probably geared more towards some fun activities together. At a conference, you're going to bring a notebook to take notes, whereas at a retreat, you're going to bring a journal because you're
Mm.
journaling your thoughts, as you're reflecting and things. Maybe the simple way, I'll throw this out to you. You tell me if this is terribly wrong, but maybe the simple way to help guys know the difference between a conference and a retreat, if they've been listening for a while, is Joe is a conference, Evan is a retreat. Is that fair? Is that
I think,
fair?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree. That's,
Okay, so that's how you should think about these things. All right, Joe's a conference, Evan is a retreat. Both are great. They each have their different approaches, and but so let's take a second. Then let's talk about what does a conference in particular add to the life of a man. So let's think about that idea of gathering men for a specific time of learning and teaching and things like that. Why should guys come? What is it going to add to the life of a man?
there's the personal element. We can read books on our own, and there's great benefit to doing so.
Mm,
But there's something about being in an environment where you've got a group of men all eager about the same subject matter. And so I think even if you're in those rows, to sing a song together, to
Yes.
listen, to then be able to break out into a small group and have some conversation, or to be able to work it out in a group, where you said where you can combine.
Hmm.
You turn your chairs, you make a circle. Now you're thinking about it, you're opening up some. Um, I think that experience of doing all of that in a group where it's been organized, you just show up, you get fed, and by the end of the week, and you walk away really feeling like, okay, you're in a better spot for
Yeah.
whatever your calling, whatever your roles are. You're set up to pursue God in that environment. And so I think, all of that is really hard to do on your own if you're just
Yeah.
working with a 20-minute quiet time or a 15-minute quiet time at the start of every day.
Yeah, I think of the times I've been to conferences and what did I walk away with? What did it add? How did it add value to my life? And some of it is just I remember having these aha moments, right? At a
Mm.
conference at some point, because you're experiencing fresh insight from someone. And so you get these aha moments in your life and you walk away with that, like experiencing something new or taking a different tact on your life. I think also conferences are great times of conviction. Like it's been times when I've been taught by someone else or gathered, yes, with other men in reflecting upon what was taught. And time of conviction and change in my life, saying, okay, this is how I've been living, or this is how I've been handling these things. And now this needs to change. I think about, when guys usually walk away from a conference, you're aiming for a more mature man, right? You're aiming for maturity. That's kind of the product there. But what you want them to walk away saying is, you know what, I was challenged into action. That's generally when you walk away from a conference, like, I was challenged into action in my life. And that's kind of how those conferences add value to your life. If you're the kind of guy that says, I need to be challenged into action, conference is definitely something you need to schedule on your calendar at some point. Let's think about that same concept, adding value to your life, but in the context of a retreat. So, what does a retreat in particular add to a man's life?
I think some of the biggest pivots in my life have been on the back of a retreat.
Yeah.
When um, you just know, you feel the pressure, you um, maybe feel really stuck, but like stuck in a way that you can't quite tell what God's wanting to do. It feels like a fork. It doesn't feel like a fork. You're just
Hmm.
lost. And then
Yeah.
you go, and in that space, sometimes talk about the aha, it's like a deeper kind of, wait a second, I got to do a big turn,
Yes.
and I got to change. And so, I've come back. I think Anna's probably scared to death when I go on a retreat, because sometimes I come back and it means, we're going to move, or, I'm changing what I'm doing in life or whatever else. But it's only been the stillness. It's only been the
Mm.
deep repentance that's led to the freedom to be able to really
Yeah.
feel, oh, this is the sense of where God's trying to lead me.
So true. Yes, yes. My wife is scared to see me go on those kind of retreats as well. Yeah, because you come back and it's like, wait, all of the way I've been handling life is wrong, and we need to change this one big thing. But no, I think the word that yeah comes to mind is just alignment. Like a lot of times
Yeah.
I find that when I go on retreats, like there is that man I want to be, and then there is that man I am, and then there's God in between in that time on a restful retreat where it's like, wait, now I get into alignment because retreats lend themselves towards times of reflection. And that's what I
Yeah.
find is, you're on a retreat when you have time and space to reflect on your life, reflect on God's grace, and reflect on where is it that you are headed in life. And all those things kind of come together in a really painful yet invigorating way. And I think it can get you on a clear path forward. And so I think that's why, yeah, men need to have some sort of time of retreat to meditate, to reflect, to rest, and to get that alignment back in their lives is a good piece. We've talked I think in both of these, I think relationships are important,
Yeah.
doing this alongside others. But how would you say, in particular, friendships come to play in the life of a conference or in retreat? Why is it important for guys to do this alongside other guys?
Thinking of a Scottish context, for a lot of guys, they're in a small church. Just numerically, there's more women and females than men. If they're at all middle age or younger, there are very few of those men. And so churches, they're not easy places to find kind of Christian peers, Christian friends, guys your age that feel like they're trying to run the same race. And so I think, for a guy in this kind of environment to go to a conference, to just look around, to meet guys, that Scotland's not that big of a country, so you're not that far from each other, and to just know, oh, there's more. And this is just a representation. I think if there's a huge boost, emotional boost that just comes in realizing I'm not the only one
Hmm.
that's struggling. I'm not the only one that has this aspiration. And often you walk away and you got some contacts,
Yeah.
maybe you find out a guy who lives just, 20 miles one direction from you, and you actually can meet up periodically. And
Yeah.
so I think it's an opportunity, again, if you live in a difficult spiritual environment, to make connections, to make guys, maybe they're not, coming with friends, but you leave with friends. And I
Hmm.
think that's a great spot to be in.
Yeah, every relationship begins with a shared experience, right? Like if I asked you how you met your wife, or when people ask me like how I met you, well, we shared an experience. We shared a discipleship group together. That's what we started doing, and we became friends through that. And so that's every relationship, right? Every relationship begins with a shared experience of some sort, and that's the good of a conference or a retreat. Is you can be one of those guys, kind of way off in Scotland, where you may not have a lot of relationships. And then you can come to a conference and you can share the experience of sitting next to one another and singing, sitting next to one another and learning, and then having to rehash what you just learned and how it looks in your own life. Getting to share a meal together, sharing a room together. You share all these things together. It combines into this one big shared experience that's the basis and maybe even the kickstart of a new relationship, of a new friendship. And so that's just how human being relationships work, is we share experiences together, and that builds what we have, and builds into something that maybe even I always tell guys, man, you never know who your next best friend is going to be, right? I'm always surprised by who my next best friend is. And a lot of it starts with a shared experience of some sort. You go to a retreat together, you go to a conference together, and all of a sudden you find a bond with another guy that you never thought you could have, or and that's where it begins. I think things like conferences, retreats, what they do for guys is it creates these moments later on down the line when you say things like, "Remember when?" Yeah, remember when we were at that conference and that thing happened? Because you had that, again, you had a shared experience. And so you're reflecting now back on that. And so you're just creating these memories together. And that's an important part of friendship and relationships, especially when we start talking about, yeah, men in churches and communities, that we need these men that have these strong relationships. Well, you got to have something that you've shared in common that you can reflect on and think about. We've all been that guy at times where you walk into a circle of guys that are talking and they're all laughing about something. And then you say, well, I don't understand. They're like, you had to be there. Right? You had to be there. And that's what it is. That's what, these conferences and retreats, you're creating those moments where you had to be there to understand that growth point. You had to be there to understand why that story's fun and funny. You had to be there. And so that's why guys need to do these kind of things together. It's because it's those moments where they were there. They were there together, and they can talk about it and reflect upon it for the future. I guess let's wrap up by just kind of plugging our upcoming conference. Like, what give guys just some clarity on what it is that exactly that we're doing, why it is that we're doing this, and let's make sure they know how to get there.
Yeah. So we'll just start by saying, I'd say, why should you go to one of these conferences? Don't start by thinking about yourself. Think about your wife. Think about
Hmm.
your kids. Think about your church. Think about all of these relationships you have, and do it for them. There's just no greater need right now than ordinary Christian guys who are able to be leaders in that ordinary space of life. And so if you come out, we've got two conferences. We've got one in the south outside Glasgow, one up north outside Inverness and Aviemore. And they're both going to have the same topic. It's going to be spiritual leadership. And this is not about you, becoming some person who can achieve all of your dreams. This is about you being able to step into that position of responsibility and have the heart, have the relationships, have the wisdom that you need to wholeheartedly serve God, his mission, and be a blessing to the people around you. And so we're going to have some of these large group sessions. We're going to make sure that there's a taught element. We're going
Hmm.
to balance that. It's not just going to be about that. It's going to be about relationships. And so it's going to be, we're going to have those shared memories. We're going to have time to talk in smaller groups. We're going to have meals together. It should be a relationally rich environment that hopefully leaves you energized, excited, with a sense of clarity and purpose, and camaraderie as you step back into life.
Yeah, particularly I want to let guys know those big teaching sessions. We are going to be talking about, yes, spiritual leadership. We're talking about the disciplines of a spiritual leader, the friendships of a spiritual leader, the character of a spiritual leader, the passions of a spiritual leader. I think we're going to really be able to enjoy some good deep study on what does it look like, giving guys a fresh vision of what it looks like to be a spiritual leader and really challenge. I really do. I hope we are able to challenge some guys, and then some guys do leave feeling convicted and wanting to change how it is that they're handling their lifestyle. We want to set guys up for success in the future. We're going to have some breakout sessions where we talk about getting started with personal spiritual growth. So maybe you're kind of on the front end of things and you just need some clarity on what it looks like to begin to set your lifestyle up for spiritual growth. What are the things that I need to be doing? So we're going to have a breakout session on that. We'll have a breakout session on developing men's discipleship groups. So if you are in a town where you feel like you're the only Christian man who's taking things seriously, how do you begin to recruit and gather other men? And what do you do once you have them? How do you have good discipleship groups, whether it be in your church or in your community? And then even just a breakout session on assessing your leadership. What is it? What do you look like right now as a leader? And what are the gaps in your life? And how do you begin to address those? So yeah, it's going to be a great time. More than anything, I think this is going to be cross-training style. So everything is going to be aimed at them, not him. So that's a big piece of conferences and retreats for us. This is stuff that, yes, you're going to be taught in rows at times, sometimes around roundtables, but we are making this content engaging for groups of men, for guys to engage with one another, to grow alongside one another, not to be isolated and on your own. And so I think it's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to flying over there and being with all the guys there in Scotland. Really excited about that. If you haven't yet registered for either of these conferences and you're interested, I will leave a link in the show notes. You should see a link on our regular website, xtrainingministries.com, but I'll put a link in the show notes. That way you can go there and register, or feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'd love to connect you with more information. But that'll be it for this week, and I hope you guys join us next time on Cross Training Ministries podcast.